When trouble knocks, Amanda had always thought her days of turmoil were behind her. As a single mother, life was already a relentless balancing act. Managing work, caring for her daughter Lily, and quietly rebuilding her sense of self after a painful divorce. Despite the long hours and small apartment, Amanda found solace in small routines: bedtime stories, morning pancakes, laughter echoing in their modest kitchen. To the world, she projected unshakable calm, her posture straight and voice gentle but firm, shielding her vulnerabilities behind an air of composure. The storm came without warning. It began as a plain white envelope, out of place among the usual bills and flyers. Amanda tore it open as she stood by the kitchen sink, still preoccupied with the day's chores. Her hands trembled as her eyes scanned the bolded legal language, a court summons from her ex-husband, Connor. He was suing for full custody of Lily. The shock hit Amanda like a physical blow. Hours crawled by as the words replayed in her mind. Endangerment. Unfit mother. Emotional instability. Each accusation was laced with half-truths, exaggerations, or outright fabrications. The letter painted a portrait so unrecognizable that Amanda wondered if Connor was describing someone else. Panic gripped her as intrusive thoughts swirled. What will people think? Could she really lose her daughter? Who would believe her truth over Connor's lies? Her friends and family had always considered Connor the model ex-husband. Charming, stable, successful. He had been distant but civil since the divorce, never hinting at animosity. That he would strike with such forceful intention left Amanda spiraling between disbelief and dread. Her mind sought explanations, re-examining their arguments and the subtle power struggles that had punctuated their marriage. Had she missed a portent of this betrayal? But Amanda had no time to nurse her wounds. She forced herself back to the basics, packing Lily's lunch, double-checking homework, smiling through bedtime even as her insides ached. In the quiet after her daughter fell asleep, Amanda reread the summons over and over, searching for hope between the lines. Every phrase made her heart sink deeper. Allegations of neglect, complaints about her financial situation, accusations of irreparable harm to Lily's development. Connor's words were sharp, calculating, meant to wound and intimidate. Amanda spent sleepless nights scouring her memory for anything he could use against her. Had she ever shouted at Lily in frustration? Missed a school play because of overtime? She remembered the isolation that settled in after the divorce, the nights she returned home exhausted, but forced a smile for her daughter, the Saturdays spent alone at the park, watching other families from a distance. Anxiety morphed into anger. How dare Connor question her love and competence as a mother? After years cleaning up the pieces he left behind, Amanda had fought silently for stability, for herself, and above all, for Lily. There was no time for self-pity now. Her daughter needed her more than ever. Yet, beneath her growing steely resolve, remnants of doubt remained. The legal process was foreign, and Amanda barely had resources for a decent lawyer. Her pulse quickened with each new realization of how outnumbered and unprepared she felt. Through the haze of fear, denial, and outrage, Amanda clung to one thought. She could not give up. As dawn crept through the curtains that first night, Amanda sat on the edge of her bed, the letter crumpled in her fists. She understood that this was only the beginning, a signal that the life she had painstakingly rebuilt would now be tested. But as the world outside stirred awake, Amanda vowed, quietly but with new determination, that she would fight for her truth, for her daughter, and for her dignity, even if she stood alone. Dark days. The days that followed Connor's attack were shadowed by a suffocating sense of isolation. Amanda awoke every morning to a world that seemed slightly colder, each sunrise painting her apartment with a pale, indifferent light. News of the custody battle traveled swiftly through whispers and concerned glances, carried by the invisible currents of neighborhood gossip. Maybe someone saw the legal notice in her mailbox, or perhaps it was Connor weaving his version of the story to sympathetic ears. At first, Amanda had hoped for understanding, some gesture, however small, that would remind her she wasn't alone. But what came instead were sidelong looks at Lily's school pickup, awkward silences at the office, and the sudden coolness of old friends who no longer returned her calls as promptly as before. Her closest relatives expressed carefully worded concern, asking, "Is there any truth to what he's saying?" Or, "Did something really happen between you and Lily?" The words stung, less for their content than for their uncertain tone. Had the people she loved truly started to doubt her? In the community, Connor's reputation worked against her. He was the parent who attended every school festival and dropped generous donations in the PTA box, always smiling, always composed. Amanda, on the other hand, carried the invisible burden of single motherhood, unpredictable schedules, missed events, fatigue etched on her face after double shifts. The contrast seemed, to outsiders, to favor Connor's claims. Rumors grew unchecked. Some called her irresponsible. Others whispered about her mental health. A few even speculated she was dangerous. Yet, in public, Amanda held herself together with a quiet determination. Her expression remained neutral, almost cold, as if no amount of slander could penetrate her armor. She kept her head high during parent-teacher meetings, replied with measured politeness to invasive questions, and refused to defend herself with desperate explanations. If anything, her composure only fueled the community's skepticism. Why isn't she fighting back? If she were truly innocent, wouldn't she show more emotion? Amanda understood the cruel irony. Society demanded that mothers be soft and transparent, but any display of fragility would be weaponized against her. Strength became her mask. Only in the privacy of her room, away from Lily's innocent questions or comforting hugs, did the facade crumble. She wept into her pillow or stared at the ceiling, haunted by shame that was not hers to bear. Her professional life, too, began to unravel. The stress bled into her work, making her distracted and quick-tempered. A supervisor scheduled a meeting to discuss her recent absences. Colleagues avoided her in the break room or spoke in hushed tones. Amanda, fearing further judgment, avoided confiding in anyone. She moved through her days like an actor reading from a script, smiling when required, only to retreat into numbness the moment she was alone. Despite the social abandonment, Amanda's resolve never broke. Whenever despair swelled in her chest, she would find Lily curled up on their worn-out sofa, coloring quietly. Amanda remembered why she had endured this loneliness in the first place. She refused to let bitterness infect their small sanctuary. Mother and daughter established tiny rituals for comfort. A secret handshake, nightly stargazing from the fire escape, whispered promises of better days. Lily's trust in her was unwavering, a silent assertion that kept Amanda from surrendering to hopelessness. Amanda also began to see through the superficial kindness of others. The ones who disappeared were never truly friends. Those left standing, however few, would reveal themselves in time. She learned to find strength in solitude, sifting through the noise of opinion to listen for her own voice. In the quiet, Amanda remembered the woman she was before fear overshadowed her spirit. As the custody hearing drew closer, rumors intensified. Even so, Amanda refused to let the negativity dictate her fate. She made a choice, one that would shape her journey forward. She would fight for her daughter not out of anger or wounded pride, but out of the belief that truth, when held with patience and dignity, could prevail, even in the darkest of days. Behind the mask. Beneath the civilized veneer of her ex-husband, Connor, Amanda began to see the shadows that hid in plain sight. His public persona, steady, affable, respected, was a carefully crafted image, and for years Amanda herself had almost believed it. But now, with every coldly worded legal document and each rumor deftly seated in their community, the mask began to slip, revealing the lengths Connor would go to maintain control. Amanda's first clues were subtle. She noticed how friends who once called her for playdates or neighborhood gatherings suddenly seemed more distant. Lily's teacher became oddly formal at pickup time, asking Amanda to sign new forms or just check in about Lily's mood at home. Over time, Amanda realized Connor was systematically undermining her credibility, feeding school officials and other parents misleading versions of their private struggles. He described her as unstable and unreliable, though always cloaked in the polite suggestions of a concerned father. The more Amanda listened, the more she perceived the invisible web Connor had spun through the community. He leveraged his professional connections, old colleagues at the law firm, business partners, even a distant cousin who worked in local government. Social events Amanda never attended became stages where Connor played the role of the worried but dignified father, subtly hinting at his ex-wife's supposed unfitness. In one painful encounter, Amanda overheard two mothers at the grocery store. "She always seems so cold," one whispered. "Connor has been so patient with her, hasn't he?" The words felt like needles. Privately, Amanda had to confront the shocking reality that her ex-husband was not simply trying to win custody. He was intent on annihilating her social and emotional footing. Connor weaponized perception, turning her independence and composure into evidence of detachment, while his own reliability was magnified by staged acts of public concern. He made anonymous reports to child services, prompting surprise welfare checks. Each new twist in Connor's campaign chipped away at Amanda's nerves, but she chose to document everything. Time-stamped voicemails, inconsistent statements from Connor, even his attempts to coach Lily's narratives during their brief visits. His power did not end at manipulation. Connor's legal tactics became increasingly aggressive. Legal fees piled up as his attorneys filed motion after motion, requests for psychological evaluations, emergency hearings, endless character assessments. What Amanda had once relegated to the realm of fiction, dirty tricks, legal loopholes, intimidation, now became the reality of her daily life. Even her legal aid lawyer seemed uneasy, warning her in hushed tones about Connor's well-placed friends at the courthouse. The strain on Amanda was enormous, but for the first time, she found a clarity that cut through her exhaustion. She saw Connor's charm as a shield that kept others from scrutinizing his actions. How could justice prevail if even the people meant to care for Lily's best interest were at risk of being swayed by Connor's smooth words and financial standing? Still, Amanda kept her own face impassive. She refused to let fear dictate her actions. She learned, through painful trial and error, how to decipher legal jargon, organize records, and recognize false kindness. Her world had shrunk to a battleground defined by strategy, avoiding direct confrontation, quietly building a case, and relying on the few allies who still believed in her. In rare moments alone, Amanda wondered how she had failed to see the warning signs before. She re-examined the nuances of their marriage, every compliment that felt like a veiled criticism, every compromise that left her more isolated. Yet, for all that Connor's mask had dazzled others, she now saw the cracks and resolved that she would be the one to expose the truth. By the close of those darkest weeks, Amanda emerged with a deeper understanding of the enemy she faced. Connor was dangerous precisely because he wore the mask so well. But Amanda, forged in hardship and forced into caution, was learning how to fight back. Not just for her daughter's sake, but for her own dignity. Beneath her own armor of seemingly cold strength, Amanda nurtured an unwavering fire. This time, she would not be deceived by masks, no matter how convincing. Pursuing justice night after night, Amanda sat hunched over her kitchen table long after Lily had gone to bed. The only light a tired yellow bulb overhead, a cold mug of coffee forgotten among stacks of paperwork. The courthouse letterhead was no longer a terror, but a call to arms. She moved past the paralysis of shock and the loneliness of betrayal. Her survival now demanded action. Amanda had never imagined herself as someone who would fight a legal battle, let alone one so lopsided. Her only brushes with the law had been traffic violations or the occasional notarized contract. Now, courts and custody evaluations loomed large in her life. With mounting urgency, she dove into the dense tangle of legal jargon. She forced herself to learn the language of petitions, responses, affidavits, and evidentiary rules. Each new term another brick in her growing fortification. She combed online forums for single mothers, chatted anonymously on support groups, and pored over articles late at night, absorbing advice on how to gather evidence and withstand cross-examination. Her first step was to recreate the past from memory and from the thin stack of paperwork she retained. She dug out medical records, school transcripts, old emails between her and Connor, anything that might counter his claims of neglect or instability. Old neighbors received hesitant texts. "Do you remember that summer when Lily was sick? Did you see her with me at the playground?" Teachers gave diplomatic responses at first, but Amanda persisted, requesting conference records, daycare logs, and written notes about Lily's progress. The process was soul-sapping, and each polite brush-off or empty promise stung like a fresh betrayal. Still, she pressed on. But unlike Connor, Amanda had neither money for high-powered attorneys nor friends in courthouse offices. The system was impossibly daunting, and she quickly discovered its cracks. The overworked social worker assigned to her case could barely conceal her resignation. "You're probably just one of dozens," Amanda thought with bitterness. Watching the young woman scribble in her notebook during a cursory home visit, it was clear the agency saw only what was convenient, ticking boxes faster than they read parents' pleas. Still, Amanda welcomed every visit, her apartment immaculate, Lily's laughter genuine, her smile pleasant but defensively cool. Deep down, a kernel of resentment grew. Even as she struggled to clear her name, Amanda saw her financial disadvantage weaponized against her. There were fees for document requests, for notarizations, for incidentals as minor as a certified transcript. Requests for financial hardship consideration met with bureaucratic stonewalling. She realized there were two kinds of mothers facing a custody battle: those who could afford war, and those who could only brace for loss. Sometimes her efforts felt pointless, blocked by faceless officials, or lost in the shuffle of overburdened court calendars. Amanda watched as Connor's legal team filed motion after motion. Psychological evaluations, surprise home inspections, requests to restrict Amanda's contact with Lily, pending investigation. The accusations, though obviously stretched for anyone who knew her, were presented with chilling professionalism. The fact that Connor's uncle sat on the Civil Court Advisory Council hardly seemed a coincidence. In response, Amanda began to keep a meticulous diary. Every exchange with Connor, every drop-off and pickup was logged with times and descriptions. When Connor started missing scheduled visits or making snide comments in public, she wrote it down. She even sought out a retired paralegal, Mrs. Garrison, whose legal clinic offered free advice to women like Amanda. For the first time, Amanda learned how to preserve digital evidence, how polite but neutral correspondence could be her shield, and how to gently encourage Lily to share, in her own words and drawings, how she felt at home. It was through Mrs. Garrison that Amanda was introduced, tentatively, to a volunteer network investigating potential abuses of the family court system. She met other mothers who had faced similar tactics: whispers of bribes, uneasy alliances, distorted court-ordered psychological tests. These stories broke Amanda's heart, but also gave her a grim sense of solidarity. "Strength in numbers," one woman insisted. Amanda, who had always kept her pain private, began to open up, albeit cautiously, about her ordeal. In between day job shifts and parenting, Amanda drafted statement after statement. She rehearsed answers to potential questions: the missed school functions, the overtime shifts, the tearful confessions to confidants. Instead of defensiveness, she learned to present facts simply and steadily, refusing to give Connor's lawyers the emotional outburst they seemed to hope for. Still, the toll was immense. Amanda's savings dwindled as nights bled into mornings. More than once, Lily found her mother asleep at the kitchen table, legal pads covered with scribbles and sticky notes fluttering like yellow leaves. Amanda tried to hide her exhaustion, but Lily was a perceptive child. One night, after Amanda broke down quietly in the shower, Lily snuck into her mother's room and offered her a handmade card. "You're my superhero, Mommy." Amanda pressed the card to her heart, fiercely grateful for the love that gave meaning to this fight. Navigating the bureaucracy, Amanda confronted corruption and apathy on every side. Sometimes it was subtle: a file misplaced, a meeting rescheduled at the last second, a judge who seemed all too friendly with Connor's lawyer. Other times it was open: a dour courthouse clerk refusing to accept a crucial form because of a technicality, or a psychologist who spent more time lunching with Connor's legal aid than listening to Amanda's story. Each time, Amanda forced herself to remain calm. She would not hand ammunition to those who doubted her motives or stoked rumors of instability. There were brief flashes of hope: a kind administrator at Lily's school who quietly offered to write a character reference, a neighbor who volunteered to testify that he always saw Lily thriving and happy in Amanda's care. Amanda cherished these moments, letting them lend her strength when exhaustion threatened to swallow her resolve. Through the hardship, Amanda's determination hardened into something almost steely. She refused to let humiliation or fatigue dictate the end of her story. Small victories, the successful submission of a crucial document, an email of support from another mother, became lifelines. Amanda started to see beyond the immediate battle for custody and glimpse the broader struggle: the flaw in a system that routinely failed women like her, the need for sunlight on its inner workings. For every setback, Amanda found a new tactic. If her legal aid was slow to respond, she wrote follow-up emails, attaching every relevant document and reciting case numbers. When Connor tried to provoke her during exchanges, Amanda smiled tightly and said nothing. When she heard new rumors, she wrote down their sources, documenting the pattern. Her weapon was quiet perseverance, her armor the truth she refused to disown. By the end of that grueling chapter, Amanda still didn't know if she would win. But the person who looked back at her from the mirror each morning was altered. Older, wearier, but less afraid. In the shadows of the legal maze, Amanda had uncovered a new sense of self. Not just a mother fighting for her child, but a woman unafraid to demand justice, no matter how uneven the playing field. Alone on the battlefield, if Amanda had once believed she'd plumbed the depths of exhaustion and fear, the weeks that followed proved just how much farther she could fall. The custody dispute, now in full swing, became a grinding war of attrition. Every sunrise brought fresh paperwork, new threats, and another reminder that she was outnumbered and outspent in a fight she'd never wanted. The tension at home grew ever more taut, like a violin string threatening to snap. Lily, so perceptive for her age, began asking questions Amanda struggled to answer. "Why is Dad angry at you?" "Do I have to live somewhere else?" Amanda forced nurturing smiles, hiding her cracks behind carefully measured words. At night, when she couldn't sleep, she'd linger by Lily's bedside, watching her child's chest gently rise and fall, wondering if the storm outside could ever truly reach this little haven. Amanda tried to maintain a semblance of routine for Lily's sake. Morning pancakes, homework sessions at the kitchen counter, movie nights curled together under a patchwork quilt, but there was no disguising the way stress haunted their modest apartment. Bills piled up on the hallway dresser. Amanda's phone, once a harmless device for messages, now erupted with calls from the courthouse, her overworked attorney, and too often, Connor's relentless parade of legal demands. Through all of it, Amanda felt the emptiness of her corner like a chill. The friend who'd once babysat at a moment's notice now dodged texts. A colleague who knew Amanda's coffee order became icy and formal. Family, too, kept their distance, tense and uncertain, fearing even proximity to her troubles lest they be drawn in or forced to take sides. The isolation was no longer just social, but existential. A bone-deep loneliness Amanda wore like a shroud. Each hearing, each conference with court officials, magnified how powerless she appeared. Connor's side arrived in suits, briefcases gleaming, with an air of careful confidence, never speaking to Amanda except through their lawyers' clipped tones. Amanda's own attorney was young, newly minted, passionate but visibly stretched thin. Amanda was grateful for her dedication, even as she noticed the subtle difference in how judges greeted Connor's legal team versus theirs. The groundwork laid by Connor, the false stories, strategically sown rumors, now bore fruit. Court-appointed psychologists approached Amanda with subtle wariness, their interviews laced with insinuations about her emotional stability. Observers took notes, lingering on her choice of words or clipped answers as if mining her distress for evidence. The simple truth that she was tired, so tired, now looked, to others, like dysfunction. Worse than being doubted was being disbelieved. Amanda realized that, to outsiders, she was simply another embattled mother in an endless parade of hearings. Her sacrifices meant nothing to the bureaucracy that weighed her worth in cold, bureaucratic reports. "We just want what's best for Lily," professionals would say with neutral politeness, as if that ideal hovered somewhere above mundane reality, unattainable for real women in real pain. Meanwhile, the financial strain became a vice with no relief. Every hour in court meant lost wages at her job. Overtime became impossible. Lily's daycare hours stretched. Amanda scrimped on groceries and quietly canceled Lily's art class, lying that they'd take a break for a while. Her own health suffered. Migraines blossomed behind her eyes. Late-night panic attacks left her gasping in the dark. Still, Amanda refused to share the depth of her struggle with Lily. The fire of maternal love, unyielding and secret, kept her moving forward. In the crucible of this struggle, Amanda found an unexpected ally. Her attorney, Sarah Tran, was as much a rookie as she was a fighter. Sharp-witted and unafraid to challenge the status quo. Sarah confided in Amanda about her own battles breaking into a male-dominated profession and admitted her disappointment with the system's bias. Together, they pored over case files late into the night, strategizing for every possible scenario. Sarah dug into procedural errors and unearthed inconsistencies in Connor's claims. Anonymous reports made during times when Amanda and Lily were verifiably elsewhere. Discrepancies in statements filed by his legal team. Sometimes Amanda felt a glimmer of hope that truth might eventually prevail, if only they could weather the relentless barrage of legal challenges. But each step forward seemed to demand a piece of Amanda's soul in trade. Court days were the worst. Amanda would rise before dawn to iron Lily's best dress, wanting her child to look cared for and loved in front of those who would pass cold judgment on their lives. In the court's waiting area, Amanda fixed her face into a mask of composure, even as her insides quaked. Every whispered conversation between lawyers, every pointed look, seemed to reinforce the sense of judgment. Her life was not her own. Sarah orchestrated Amanda's witness list. A neighbor who could testify that Lily was happy and well cared for. A teacher willing to submit a quiet character reference. But defense witnesses, paid experts, family friends of Connor, countered every point with polished authority. Testimony after testimony stacked up, each treating Amanda's pain and history as theoretical, abstract data points. In private, Amanda counted her losses. Her job, once a refuge, was now another ground for battle. Supervisors hinted that her distractedness affected company productivity. Coworkers politely avoided her, as if conflict might be contagious. Her reputation wilted beneath the twin weights of scandal and fatigue. There were days Amanda stared at herself in the mirror and struggled to reconcile the woman staring back, lined, hollow-eyed, but still standing, with the cheerful mother she'd once been. And yet something inside Amanda hardened, not into bitterness, but into resolve. The more razor-edged Connor's attacks became, the colder Amanda grew. Gone were apologies or justifications. Before court, she practiced her logic, rehearsed her answers, and forced herself to focus not on her own pain, but on clarity and fact. She would not cry in the witness box. She would not hand Connor's team one tear, one tremor of vulnerability that could be twisted into proof of her instability. Isolated, slandered, and pushed to her limits, Amanda grew cautious and methodical. She documented every interaction, every expense, every missed visitation on Connor's part. Sarah reviewed each log with a keen eye, noting patterns, building a case for custodial interference, and the harmful emotional climate Connor fostered. Amanda learned to find power in these routines, a strange comfort in the act of recording, as if turning her pain into evidence could somehow dilute its sting. Late one night, after a particularly grueling session reviewing court transcripts, Sarah set her notes aside and looked Amanda squarely in the eye. "People like us don't get justice by being loud," she said. "We get it by surviving, by not letting them break us." Amanda felt something luminous flicker inside. The tenacity she thought she'd lost, rekindled by a simple truth. Through it all, Amanda never let her bitterness take root. With Lily, she laughed as much as she could, defending their little world against sorrow inch by inch. Together, they invented new games, scribbled secret messages on sticky notes, and whispered hopes for days after the storm. Alone in the quiet, Amanda steeled herself for whatever came next, resolved that, even stranded on this battlefield, she would not surrender her love or dignity. The war was not yet over and would likely grow uglier before hope surfaced. But Amanda, strengthened by hardship and the rare loyalty of a few, now understood. Heroes were not forged by victory, but by the courage to endure, even when the world left them utterly alone. Faint light on the horizon. The air in Amanda's apartment was thick with exhaustion, but beneath her fatigue flickered an ember that would not die. Those endless weeks felt like they would swallow her whole. Every day had been a battle, every night a test of resilience. But on a chilly Thursday morning, as the city buzzed outside and Lily finished breakfast at the cramped kitchen table, Amanda felt the world shift. So subtly, she almost missed it. It began with an unremarkable envelope, one she might have dismissed another day as yet more paperwork or another bureaucratic demand. This one, though, was from the school district. Inside was a brief, formal letter referencing concerns recently addressed in the legal context. Enclosed, however, was something Amanda hadn't realized anyone was keeping. A series of annotated teacher logs from Lily's first grade year. Hard evidence, Carefully documented notes about Amanda's engagement in Lily's life, late-night emails about homework, extra conference meetings she'd requested, affirmations of Lily's progress with Amanda's involvement. Amanda blinked back tears. This wasn't a miracle or an outright exoneration. It was paper, words, observations. But here, in her hands, was a string of facts testifying to what she'd struggled to convey. Her deep, relentless devotion as a mother. Hope squeezed its way into her chest. Her attorney, Sarah, was cautiously optimistic. "This isn't the end-all," she hedged, scanning the documents with a practiced eye. "But it's real, independent evidence. If we present these with testimony from the teachers, it contradicts everything Connor has claimed." For the first time in months, Sarah's smile didn't look forced. Amanda felt herself breathe easier. Just a little. As days stretched on, Amanda's universe gradually lit with tiny sparks of support. The neighbor across the hall, a quiet woman Amanda had once chatted with only in passing, knocked shyly one evening. Her voice was hesitant but firm. "I know you and Lily. If you need someone to say what I've seen, I'll do it." It was a lifeline Amanda didn't know she needed. The simple act of another adult vouching for her steadiness, her nurturing, loosened the knot of isolation in Amanda's chest. At school, Lily's teacher pulled Amanda aside at pickup, a gentle hand on her arm. "I've watched Lily thrive with you. If you want a formal statement, I can provide one." The teacher's offer was more than a professional courtesy. It was faith in action, risked for someone the community had branded with suspicion. Each assurance was a slender thread in the fragile tapestry of Amanda's hope. Buoyed by these small victories, Amanda's approach to the looming custody hearing sharpened. With a determination steelier than before, she combed through her meticulous records, diaries, emails, schedules, receipts from doctor's appointments. Where before her documentation had felt desperate, now it became ammunition. Every note, every calendar entry had the potential to tip the scales. Meanwhile, word began to spread, quietly and only among a handful at first, that Connor's pristine reputation had cracks. In a moment Amanda never expected, a former co-worker of Connor's contacted Sarah, asking for a confidential meeting. The woman recounted a pattern of manipulation at the office. How Connor had once thrown a subordinate under the bus to preserve his own standing. How he spun stories for his own advantage. She wasn't willing to testify publicly, but she provided details that could support Amanda's legal team in building a broader picture of Connor's character. Even without open court testimony, having someone validate Amanda's private suspicions felt like light breaking through a chink in heavy clouds. Amanda noticed other shifts too. The social worker, previously so brisk as to seem indifferent, now lingered during visits. Her questions grew more curious about Lily's well-being, less skeptical of Amanda's answers. One afternoon, as Lily danced through the living room, the woman paused, watching Amanda and her daughter share a round of giggles. "She really does seem happiest here," she murmured, almost to herself. Amanda's heart soared. Still, not every change was dramatic. Most days wore on with the same blend of uncertainty and anxiety. Rumors in the community persisted. Amanda still heard snide comments, some whispered, some delivered with polite condescension that barely hid the sting. She remained cautious, knowing that a single misstep could undo what little ground she'd regained. But the hope growing inside her changed how Amanda moved through the world. Exhaustion still haunted her eyes, but her posture straightened. Her conversations with Sarah became less about fear and more about strategy. How to subpoena teachers as character witnesses. How to highlight the inconsistencies in Connor's stories. How to address the financial bias within the courtroom with dignity rather than shame. The most important shift, however, blossomed quietly at home. Lily, ever sensitive to her mother's moods, grew lighter. Where once her questions had hinted at fear, "Will we be okay, Mommy?" Now she asked about ordinary things. "Can we make pancakes this Saturday?" Or, "Will you braid my hair tomorrow?" Amanda recognized the subtle return of innocence, and it gave her strength. Their nightly rituals, stargazing out the window, reading chapters from worn library books, whispered dreams for the future, felt less like a desperate defense and more like the foundation of something real and enduring. Then, in a development Amanda dared not imagine, Sarah received a response to a long-shot request. Connor's recent attempt to file an ex parte motion, a legal gambit meant to restrict Amanda's access to Lily, had been denied by the court for lack of evidence. In the court's response, Amanda saw the faintest acknowledgement that the truth might, finally, be sifting through the static of accusation and rumor. Amanda and Sarah worked late into that night, preparing for the crucial hearing ahead. They pored over evidence, rehearsed Amanda's testimony, and strategized about countering Connor's attacks, now weaker, less credible, but still dangerous. The kitchen was a war room, but also a place where laughter interrupted the seriousness. Sarah, once a distant legal guide, became friend and confidant, sharing stories from her own life, her first case, her fears about justice, her belief in Amanda's strength. Throughout those weeks, Amanda's resilience evolved. Hope was not a blinding light that chased away all shadows, but a quiet, persistent glow she could carry within her. There were still setbacks, still days when Amanda flinched at the ring of the phone, when Lily braced at the mention of another meeting. There were no guarantees. But for the first time since Connor's attack had upended their lives, Amanda saw possibility replace dread. She began to imagine a future not always on the defensive, but built on her own terms. As the chapter drew to a close, Amanda paused at her window, looking out at the city lights flickering against the night. Each glint in the darkness felt like a story of struggle, of heartache, but also of perseverance and the stubbornness of hope. Amanda knew the battle wasn't over, but with her daughter safe asleep and the certainty that truth had found a voice, she dared to believe that dawn was, at last, within reach. The unmasking. The day Amanda had both dreaded and longed for finally arrived, her chance to face Connor in court and lay bare the reality behind his calculated facade. The courthouse felt colder than usual, corridors echoing with tense footsteps and whispered speculation. Amanda's heart pounded steadily, not just with fear, but with a cautious hope. All her months of struggle, documentation, and inner endurance were about to converge at this moment. As Amanda entered the courtroom, she caught sight of Connor across the aisle. He looked impeccable as always, tailored suit, calm demeanor, a faint, practiced sadness in his eyes. His legal team gathered around him with confident efficiency, while Amanda and Sarah sat at their own battered table. Fewer in number, but for the first time, Amanda felt the weight of truth on her side. The hearing began with formality, the judge presiding with measured authority. Connor's lawyers went first, reviewing previous motions and painting Amanda as unstable, cold, unfit. Their words were slick with insinuation but devoid of hard evidence. Amanda listened silently, her head held high, refusing to let her emotions show, even when they dredged up painful incidents or twisted minor slip-ups into supposed proof of her incompetence. When her turn finally came, Sarah's voice rang clear, calm, and methodical. She presented the teacher logs that showed Amanda's engagement in all aspects of Lily's life. Late-night emails about homework, parent-teacher meetings she requested, consistent notes about Lily thriving in Amanda's care. For every vague accusation, there was a concrete piece of evidence. Emails, timestamps, testimonies from neighbors and the school administrator, even drawings and notes from Lily herself. Where Connor's camp relied on vague concerns and social standing, Amanda's case was built on transparency and irrefutable records. But Sarah wasn't done. she moved to introduce a confidential witness, a former co-worker of Connor's, whose statement, while not official testimony, had been allowed as supporting evidence. The woman laid out, in detail, how Connor manipulated workplace relationships and routinely shifted blame to others when things went awry. She described his calculated charm and how swiftly it turned icy when challenged. The judge listened intently, making notes. For the first time, Connor's mask seemed to flicker. Power shifted subtly in the room. The judge began pressing Connor's attorneys for substance. Where, exactly, were the records of Amanda's alleged instability, the verified reports of neglect? Connor's lawyer adjusted his tie, citing anonymous calls to social services, which Sarah, now prepared, revealed as coming from sources tracing back to Connor's side, often coinciding with times Lily was documented to be safe and happy with Amanda. Amanda felt herself breathe a little easier, bolstered by the unwavering support of her attorney and the careful presentation of truth. Still, the opposing counsel fought hard. They called their own expert witnesses, paid family therapists and acquaintances who had only seen Amanda in brief, tense exchanges during custody exchanges. Their words were measured, but lacked depth. Amanda held her ground, answering questions simply, refusing to be baited into emotional outbursts. Then came the pivotal moment. Sarah produced Amanda's meticulous diaries and communication logs, showing a clear timeline of Lily's routine, Amanda's medical appointments, and even documented times Connor missed visitations without warning. She overlaid these with suspiciously timed anonymous child welfare reports, exposing a pattern. Complaints arose, almost clockwork, after contentious court dates or when Amanda refused Connor's manipulative requests. A hush fell on the courtroom. Even the judge, whose face had been impassive for so long, leaned forward with visible interest. The pattern was hard to ignore, but it was not just documentation that tipped the balance. The school administrator, previously silent in the back row, rose to provide direct testimony. She spoke about Amanda's advocacy for her daughter, her gentle insistence on Lily's needs, and the difference between community gossip and direct observation. Lily is happy and safe with her mother, the administrator said simply. That's what matters most. The hearing continued in this vein for hours, argument and rebuttal, presentation and cross-examination. Connor's veneer suffered a slow but visible unraveling. His answers to the judge grew more defensive. When asked to explain the numerous welfare reports proven to be false, he spoke vaguely, insisting he was acting only out of concern for Lily, but the judge wasn't easily convinced. "Concern is admirable, Mr. Harding," she said, tone even but edged with skepticism. "But false reporting wastes resources and harms the very child you claim to protect." Amanda glanced at her daughter, who sat quietly with a friend of the court. Lily's presence reminded Amanda of exactly why she had endured so much. The urge to weep with relief was overwhelming, but Amanda stayed composed, letting the facts and witnesses do what months of anxiety could not: restore her reputation and prove her love. The last witness was Amanda herself. Nervous but steady, she spoke honestly about the difficulties of single motherhood, her mistakes and triumphs, and most of all, her unconditional commitment to Lily. She did not stage an act of desperation or anger. She simply told the truth about the nights she worked late, the times she reached out for help, and the love that grounded her even on her loneliest days. Her answers were calm, direct, disarming. For the first time, Amanda saw the judge's eyes soften. With closing statements complete, the room exhaled. The judge would take time to review, but Amanda knew a shift had occurred in the room's atmosphere. A new recognition that things were not as they had seemed. As Amanda stepped outside, the sky had cleared. Reporters lingered at the courthouse steps, but she didn't stop. Sarah gripped her shoulder with encouragement, whispering, You showed them the truth today. Amanda breathed in the crisp air, feeling the long-held tension in her body begin to ease. She was bruised, but no longer broken, having stripped away the mask Connor had worn for so long. For the first time in what felt like ages, Amanda allowed herself to believe. The narrative was changing, and justice, at last, seemed possible. Justice revealed. The morning of the ruling dawned gray and cold, a sky heavy with unspoken possibilities. Amanda awoke before her alarm, nerves humming beneath the thin comforter she shared with Lily during anxious nights. Today, every moment felt magnified. Lily's quiet yawn, the steam rising from Amanda's mug, the weight of a single envelope resting on the kitchen table, still unopened from the day before. In a few hours, everything might change. Amanda dressed Lily carefully, her hands steady even as her spirit trembled. "You're going to school, sweetheart," she reminded her daughter gently, kissing the top of her head. "No matter what happens today, I'll be waiting when you get home." She packed an extra snack, a small, silent act of hope. After the school bus pulled away, Amanda allowed herself a moment to breathe, hands pressed flat on the kitchen counter, eyes closed. The apartment was quiet, but she felt the echo of the entire past year vibrating through her bones. When Amanda arrived at the courthouse, there was already a subtle change in the air. She noticed familiar faces among the crowd. Reporters she'd seen outside before, now glancing at her with cautious respect rather than suspicion. The neighbor who had volunteered a statement in her defense, even the school administrator who had spoken of Lily's happiness in Amanda's care. People who had been silent during her darkest months now seemed to return, re-emerging in the sunlight of what might finally be justice. Inside, Sarah was waiting, legal pad in hand, composure unwavering. She greeted Amanda with a small, encouraging smile. "This is it," she said quietly. "No matter how the judge rules, you've changed the story. You stood your ground." Amanda nodded, feeling both dread and relief coiled together within her chest. The judge's clerk called them forward. Amanda caught her breath and followed. The courtroom was packed. Even Connor looked less certain than usual. His gaze darted, his suit not quite so crisp, his team's whispers more frantic than poised. Amanda noticed the subtle shift, an unraveling of Connor's easy confidence. She wondered briefly what thoughts churned beneath his mask now that it had begun to crack. The judge entered, took her seat, and began reading the findings in a calm, even voice that reverberated off the wood-paneled walls. The recitation took nearly an hour. Amanda's heart thudded in her ears even as she clung to every word. The judge detailed the events of the trial, the testimony, the logs, the careful dissection of rumor versus evidence. She spoke of Amanda's steady presence, her documented efforts to nurture and advocate for Lily, and weighed them against Connor's accusations and the manipulative patterns identified in court. At last, the ruling. The judge denied Connor's petition for sole custody, declaring the majority of his evidence either unsubstantiated or worse, deliberately misleading. Amanda's custody was reinstated, fully and unequivocally. The court admonished Connor for his misuse of legal proceedings and for placing Lily in the path of unnecessary turmoil. For the first time since the ordeal began, Amanda's name was spoken in the clear light of vindication, her role as Lily's devoted parent not only restored, but publicly recognized. A hush fell, followed by ripples of whispered reaction. Connor's mask crumbled further before Amanda's eyes. Gone was the assuredness, replaced by a flush of resentment and wounded pride. His team immediately huddled, scrambling to save face, while a few journalists slipped out to file breaking updates. But Amanda felt none of the triumph she'd imagined during her most desperate moments. Instead, she was overwhelmed by quiet relief, and beneath it, a profound sadness for all that had been lost, for the violence the legal process had wrought on her spirit and Lily's innocence. She wanted only to go home, to return to the small rituals she and her daughter had clung to while the world closed in. In the days that followed, word of the verdict spread. Public opinion, once a force that had isolated Amanda, began to turn. People who had once whispered about her, friends, acquaintances, school staff, now reached out with tentative apologies or hopeful words. Some sent cards. Others, emboldened by the shift, shared their own stories of endurance. Yet Amanda moved through it all quietly, neither bitter nor vindictive. She accepted support with grace and refused to gloat over Connor's defeat. Her dignity, so hard won, remained unshakable. Connor, by contrast, faced ramifications far beyond custody. His reputation, formerly untouchable, suffered blow after blow. Stories leaked about his manipulation at work. Colleagues who had privately questioned his ethics now spoke more openly. His role within the community shrank, invitations dried up, and clients distanced themselves. Far from just losing a court case, Connor stood exposed, a warning of what unmasked hubris could bring. For Amanda, the return to daily life was not instantaneous. She spent a week tidying the apartment, donating the files and notebooks that had consumed her nights, scrubbing away the fear that had stained each corner. Lily picked up on her mother's lighter step and soon reclaimed their routines. Pancakes on Saturday mornings, quiet walks in the park, evenings spent reading together. The laughter Amanda once worked so hard to protect now returned spontaneously, free of the tension that had haunted their small sanctuary. Still, Amanda did not forget the loneliness of her struggle or the faces that had disappeared when solidarity was needed most. She forgave for her own sake, but remembered. The experience left her changed, more guarded, perhaps, but also more appreciative of true friends and the value of her own resilience. She thought often of Sarah, who became not just an advocate, but a genuine friend. Together, they reflected on what it meant to fight injustice and how rare and precious it was to see justice truly served. On the evening after the verdict, Amanda and Lily sat together on the fire escape, watching as dusk slid over the city. A gentle autumn wind tugged at their hair. Lily leaned against her mother's shoulder. "Are we safe now?" she asked, eyes bright with hope. Amanda wrapped her arm around her daughter, pulling her close. "Yes, sweetheart, we're safe. And we're together. That's what matters most." For the first time in many months, Amanda believed it. Even as messages of support continued to trickle in and community opinion shifted in her favor, Amanda remained humble. She rejected invitations for interviews, resisted any urge to publicize her vindication, and focused instead on rebuilding trust. First with herself, then with those willing to meet her in genuine friendship. In quiet moments, Amanda contemplated the meaning of justice, not as a grand, triumphant victory, but as a quiet restoration of what should never have been threatened in the first place. Justice had not erased the pain or the scars of the previous year, but it had brought clarity. Her truth, once buried beneath suspicion and rumor, was now impossible to ignore. Amanda learned that true justice is not vengeance or vindication, but the restoration of dignity, the quiet acknowledgement of suffering, the return of what was unfairly taken, and the assurance that even when the world falters, hope can endure. As she tucked Lily into bed that night, Amanda paused at the doorway, gazing at her daughter's peaceful face. In the hush of their safe home, she whispered a promise to herself. Whatever storms lay ahead, this hard-won peace would be her legacy to Lily. And as the city lights twinkled beyond the window, Amanda finally allowed herself to rest, not in victory, but in the simple, powerful relief of justice revealed. Real worth. After the courthouse victory and the gentle, measured return to normal life, Amanda found herself in unfamiliar territory. A space no longer crowded with fear, but with a deep sense of quietness. It was as if the world, for so long tilted against her, had finally settled still. She and Lily slipped back into their routines, but each moment now carried a new weight. For Amanda, the months of adversity had chiseled away the illusion of what truly mattered, exposing the bedrock of her values and her strength in its purest form. In the days that followed, Amanda felt an ache she hadn't expected. Not sorrow or anger, but a strange, contemplative emptiness. It showed up in the silent spaces after Lily left for school, in the hush between household noises, a pause demanding she reckon with all that had changed inside her. For so long she had fought to clear her name, to protect her daughter, to prove her worth. Now, with the struggle behind her, Amanda was left with herself. She walked through the apartment as though rediscovering it for the first time. The kitchen no longer smelled of burnt tension, but of fresh coffee and pancakes on Saturday mornings. Sunlight sifted through the windows, illuminating old photographs on the fridge, snapshots from better times, Lily's crayon drawings, a faded family picture from years ago. Each detail felt precious, not because life was perfect, but because every piece had been paid for with sleepless nights and unyielding hope. Amanda's reflection in the hallway mirror no longer startled her. She touched the soft lines at the corners of her eyes, stripes drawn by worry and endurance. They were not marks of defeat, but of survival. She had often doubted her own capacity when judged or left isolated. Yet day after day, she got up again. For Lily, and now, she realized, for herself as well. Her interactions with others slowly shifted too. The city's invisible net of gossip, once so suffocating, gradually unraveled. Neighbors who avoided her in the past now offered gentle nods in the hallway, tentative offers of help. At Lily's school, parents whose eyes once flickered with suspicion now approached her with genuine warmth, some opening up about their own silent battles. In these exchanges, Amanda found a new connection, not in shared victory, but in vulnerability and mutual respect. One Saturday, Lily invited the neighbors' children to join their pancake breakfast. Amanda watched them laugh and squabble over syrup, feeling a rare ease settle in her chest. Afterward, she sat with Mrs. Kim from across the hall, sharing stories about raising children alone. "You're stronger than most," Mrs. Kim said, her voice low but filled with admiration. Amanda smiled, realizing for the first time that her story had become a quiet kind of encouragement to others like her. Not for dramatic heroics, but for choosing love every single day despite the world's doubts. At work, Amanda's focus slowly returned. The cloud of scrutiny lifted, and with it came new opportunities, small projects, trust from supervisors, a whispered, "Welcome back," from a coworker who had once kept her distance. Amanda worked with a steadier purpose now. She no longer measured her value by flawless performance, but by honesty, diligence, and integrity, even in tasks no one else would notice. Yet, it was at home with Lily where the truest restoration unfolded. Their life was still simple: meals on a shoestring budget, secondhand books, hand-me-down jackets when autumn came. But Amanda relished these things as treasures. Each routine, bedtime stories, stargazing on the fire escape, weekend walks to the library, became a quiet celebration. Her conversations with Lily deepened in ways that surprised her. Where once she shielded her daughter from her worries, Amanda now welcomed Lily's curious questions about the world, about fairness and kindness and what it meant to be good. She answered honestly, teaching Lily not just to hope, but to persist. Amanda also made time for herself in small ways. A cup of tea by the window at dusk, a journal she kept not to record fear, but gratitude. Sometimes, she wrote letters she never sent, one to the judge who had looked her in the eye, one to Sarah for her faithful defiance, even one to her former self, aching and afraid, but never broken. These were rituals of closure and rebirth. The hardest reckoning came one night as she tucked Lily into bed. The little girl turned, her eyes shining in the half-dark. "Why did all those bad things happen to us, Mommy?" The question cut deep, but Amanda didn't shy away. She considered her answer carefully, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. "Sometimes," Amanda said softly, "people do hurtful things because they're unhappy or scared. Sometimes the world isn't fair, but every time we stood up for ourselves, every time we told the truth and cared for each other, we got stronger. What matters most isn't that bad things happened. It's that we never stopped loving, no matter what." Lily hugged Amanda tightly, seeming to understand in her own child's way. And as Amanda sat there, she realized her daughter had never doubted her, not during the rumors, the hearings, or the bleakest nights. Lily's trust had been Amanda's compass, her only real measure of success. In that warm, fragile embrace, Amanda understood the real worth of her struggle. Not recognition, not approval from authorities or the community, but the faith she had reclaimed in herself and the example she'd set for her child. Weeks passed, and reminders of the custody battle gradually faded. The city moved on. Amanda treasured the rare evening when she, Sarah, and a few new friends gathered for coffee, women who had stood on their own lonely battlefields. They spoke little of their legal scars, choosing instead to share laughter, recipes, stories of resilience. Amanda felt herself belonging in a way she never had before, not because she had won, but because she had endured. By autumn, as leaves drifted down on quiet streets, Amanda and Lily decorated their small home with paper stars. One night, from their fire escape, Lily pointed at the sky and whispered, "We're safe, right?" Amanda nodded, heart swelling. "We're safe, and we're together. That's the most important thing in the world." As Amanda gazed out over the city, her city, now a little kinder, she understood that her real value lay neither in triumph nor suffering, but in the quiet, unflagging courage to choose compassion, honesty, and love every day. Against all odds, she had given that legacy to her daughter. No trial or hardship could ever take that away. Stepping into the future. As autumn matured into winter, Amanda found herself standing at a threshold. There was no single moment of revelation, no sudden clarity about what life would look like after so much struggle. Only the gentle, persistent unfolding of a new beginning. In the weeks following her legal victory, Amanda realized that surviving the storm was not the end, but rather the start of a quieter, subtler journey. Rebuilding herself and guiding Lily into a future of their own making. The wounds of the ordeal lingered like faint scars, invisible to the world but unmistakable in Amanda's private moments. Sometimes she would catch herself flinching at the mention of the courthouse, or stare for too long at the stack of old legal documents she hadn't yet dared to throw away. There were nights when sleep eluded her, memories of hostile glances and suffocating loneliness returning unbidden. Yet, over time, their force diminished. Not vanishing entirely, but losing the power to dictate Amanda's present. Amanda became fiercely protective of the small rituals that had once been her shield. Weekend pancake mornings took on a celebratory air. Lily's laughter, echoing through the apartment, felt like music Amanda had never truly heard until now. They created new traditions, a gratitude jar by the kitchen window, letters to their future selves tucked inside. They explored the city like newcomers, visiting museums, feeding ducks at the park, or hunting for the best street cart hot chocolate. Each experience, no matter how minor, was reclaimed from the shadow of what had been lost. With resolve, Amanda made space for healing, not only for herself, but for Lily. She enrolled them in a local community art class, wanting Lily to find joy and confidence in colors and shapes after a year colored by anxiety. Amanda herself joined a support group for single parents, not out of necessity, but from a desire to offer solidarity to those still fighting their own invisible battles. The vulnerability was daunting at first, a room filled with strangers and hard stories, but Amanda soon recognized herself in their resilience, their humor, and their quiet hopes for tomorrow. Professionally, Amanda's journey took on a new urgency. The trials she had endured left her less tolerant of complacency and more attuned to meaning in her own work. She requested new responsibilities, took on mentorship of a younger colleague, and slowly, her efforts were acknowledged by supervisors who had once been wary of her distraction. One afternoon, Amanda's manager called her in for a private conversation. "I've watched what you've gone through," he said, "and I see the determination you bring now. We could use that leadership in our next project." For the first time in months, Amanda felt recognized for her growth, not her suffering. Their home, too, changed in subtle ways. Amanda and Lily painted the faded hallway walls in cheerful yellows and soft greens, stringing fairy lights for cheer during the long winter evenings. They invited neighbors for tea and simple dinners, reaching beyond the loneliness that hardship had forced upon them. Lily, who once shrank from attention or questions, began to invite friends over, proudly introducing her mother and showing off her latest stories and drawings. The isolation that had once threatened to cocoon them now gave way to a cautious but genuine sense of belonging. Lily's healing was quieter, marked by questions that surfaced at unexpected times. A request for a lullaby she'd loved as a baby, a tearful inquiry about whether she'd ever have to move again. Amanda answered each one honestly, never shying from the truth, but always ending with reassurance. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." Gradually, the tension lifted from Lily's small shoulders. The nightmares and anxious mornings grew less frequent, replaced by the resilience that Amanda had, perhaps unconsciously, modeled every day. Now, when Amanda walked Lily to school, she no longer avoided the eyes of other parents. She met gazes with quiet confidence, open to new friendships and willing, even eager, to offer kindness and support to those around her. At first, some still whispered when they thought she could not hear, but with time, Amanda realized that most simply saw her as another parent, no longer a cautionary tale, but a part of the tapestry of their community. The greatest change, however, was internal. Amanda understood now that worth was not determined by the judgments of others, nor by difficult circumstances. Strength, she realized, lay in the willingness to endure, to hope, and to keep moving, even when the future was uncertain. The scars, while still present, became reminders not just of pain, but of survival and a love that refused to be extinguished. As the new year approached, Amanda and Lily made plans, modest but meaningful. They would save for a summer camping trip, just the two of them, their first true vacation together. Amanda sorted through her books, selecting those she'd kept for years but never read, determined to rediscover quiet joys. Some weekends, she allowed herself the luxury of solitude, a long walk in the crisp air, journaling over coffee, dreaming about possibilities she had not let herself consider in so long. On a snowy evening in February, Amanda found Lily at the kitchen table, carefully cutting colored paper into stars. "Can we hang these in my room?" Lily asked. Amanda smiled, helping her tape the stars to the ceiling, their shapes glowing gently in the lamplight. "These are wishes," Lily whispered. "I think they'll watch over us." Amanda kissed her daughter's forehead, a rush of warmth flooding her heart. "What are you wishing for?" Amanda asked. Lily thought for a long moment. "I wish for us to always be together, and that you'll never be sad again." Amanda felt tears threaten but blinked them back, her voice steady. "That's a beautiful wish. And I have one too, that you always know how loved you are, no matter what happens." In the quiet that followed, Amanda realized her greatest lesson. The future is built not from what was lost or endured, but from courage, hope, and the willingness to love again and again, despite everything. This realization did not erase the past, but it made the present radiant and the future inviting. From their window, mother and daughter looked out over the city, a city still imperfect, but in Amanda's eyes, remarkably transformed. Somewhere below, life moved on. The hum of buses, distant sirens, laughter on the sidewalk. Within their home, Amanda felt peace settle. It was a peace built brick by brick, from countless small acts of resilience, and it was theirs. Stepping into the future, Amanda no longer felt defined by suffering, nor shadowed by fear. She carried her scars with quiet dignity, steady in the knowledge that real worth blossomed in the daily choice to persevere, to find meaning, and to love. Whatever the next chapter held, Amanda embraced it, not as a survivor, but as the true author of her and Lily's life.